Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. Today I'm going to be showing you guys what I believe to be the best build for Zane, not only for leveling up, but also for clearing mobs very efficiently at endgame. You can definitely use this build at endgame. It's very strong, a lot of fun to play with as well because you're moving insanely fast while using it. I did a decent amount of testing, trying to figure out the best combination for this. I actually was streaming while I did it, so if you want to see that in the future, make sure to check me out over on twitch.tv/Nick2. But anyways, I was streaming while doing this, and I pretty much just did a lot of testing different variations of the build, etc. And this is what I determined to be the best setup of the build. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Actually, if this video does help you, please be sure to drop a like. That helps me out a ton. All right, getting into the build itself. A lot of people are going to ask me what skin this is, so let's just get this out of the way. Boom, boom, boom. Go over to this guy. The skin that I'm using is the Teal Appeal, and the head skin is the Suction Filter. But yeah, a lot of people are asking what the skin is. Figured I'd just show you boys. So getting into the build itself, since this is going to be a guide for leveling, I decided to do it just like I did with my flak and pretty much just leave a completely empty slate, and then I'll just go over with you guys every individual spec point that I go into, and I'll also explain my decisions, how each of the talents work, and what options you have when going down each tree. There are a few different variations of this build, and you can kind of deviate from how I do things in terms of how you want to start off, but personally, this is how I think is going to be best when leveling up. Obviously, when you're at endgame, it doesn't matter. As long as you just get all of the talents in general, then you're perfectly fine. Yeah, getting into it. So first off, one of the main things I noticed with Zane is that the skill that you're using doesn't really matter nearly as much as what spec you're going into or the stuff that you're spending your points on. I'm sure a lot of you guys notice that when you're trying different, abilities and stuff, it seems to be rather underwhelming. And that's because you're not really trying to focus on making the abilities really good. You're kind of just trying to focus on making yourself really good. So starting off, I would recommend first going into Violent Momentum. This is going to increase your gun damage the more that you're moving, or the faster that you're moving. So at max, you get 20, I believe it's 20, I don't even know, 20% extra gun damage at default walk speed. I have just a class mod that gives me additional towards this. This is really good because basically what you're able to do with Zane is stack a ridiculous amount of movement speed, and I'll show you guys how you can do that. And then that's just going to increase your damage a crap load, and then you can use guns where you're able to side strafe and take very good advantage of the additional gun damage that you're going to get here. So first, I just go 5 into this immediately just so that you can unlock Sentinel, just so that you have a skill to use while you're immediately leveling up. And then what you want to do next is kind of up to you. Personally, I would just go boom 5 directly into violent speed just so that you have more movement speed whenever you kill something. This is going to make it much faster process while you're leveling up. Or you could definitely just go into synchronicity, which is going to increase your gun damage when you have more action skills active. I think it's important to go for this early because you want to unlock clone early, and once you have 5 points in there, then you're able to get clone active, and then you're able to pop both Sentinel and clone and then gain full benefit from this, which is going to give you 40% gun damage, which is really going to make a huge difference early on. In terms of what else is here, Cold Bore really isn't all that strong here. This is just going to increase your weapon swap speed and then increase one shot fired swapping off the weapon. Pretty obvious this is pretty lackluster. So you have 2 options here. You can start to go down this tree, and then we're pretty much just going to end at this tree around this area, or you can continue to go down this tree and then just gain a lot of movement speed so that you're kind of just flying through the campaign. Personally, if you're trying to gain as much damage as humanly possible, I think what you'd want to do, and like I said, you can kind of go in whatever order you want here, but if you're trying to get as much damage as possible, I think what you'd want to do is probably finish getting what you need in the blue tree and then starting to go more into the red tree. But I don't know, it really depends, and there's a lot of moving pieces for this, and the difference is really not that substantial. So next, I would just go into boom reload speed, because this is going to give you 30% reload speed every single time that you kill somebody, and of course, while you're leveling, you're getting a lot of kills. The other things here really aren't that good. Sentinel is going to drop a free nade. That doesn't really matter that much. This is actually good. The reason that I don't run it is because I personally am not having problems with survivability, but while leveling, it's definitely possible that you are having problems with survivability, and you can easily go into this early on because you're going to get 10% lifesteal after you kill somebody, and it's going to last for 8 seconds, and obviously you're killing stuff all the time while you're leveling up, so you're going to have this up pretty much all the time. This is going to give you 10% lifesteal, which is going to be huge, pretty much making you nearly invincible with the way that it works. And then stacking it with Death Follows, which is very good, is going to make all of your kill skills gain an increased effect and duration. The duration is huge, and I mean, just the effect here, I mean, it's awesome because a lot of the stuff that you're taking advantage of in this tree is kill skills. Violent Speed, kill skill. Cool Hand, kill skill. Violent Violence, which is what we're going to go into next, which is going to give you a total of 25% fire rate, which is a huge amount of damage. Kill skill. So increasing the duration and the effectiveness of this is absolutely huge. If you were to go into the lifesteal thing, you could easily go into that early on here. But in the final version of the build, I would not recommend it unless you're really having problems with survivability. In terms of what you want to use on your Sentinel, because now you'll have this other stuff unlocked here, personally, I went for Bad Dose, which is going to increase your movement speed, fire rate, damage of Sentinel. It's going to increase all of that whenever your Sentinel just shoots out a beam of radiation, and it's going to weaken enemies, and it's pretty much just going to buff you. If there's a lot of enemies around, obviously you're going to gain a lot of fire rate, a lot of movement speed, and overall that's just extra damage, and it's going to make things much smoother. I don't really think that converting the weapon to cryo is all that good. It's okay initially, and if you're noticing that it's freezing the enemies a lot because of the damage scaling, then you can use it, because obviously freezing the enemies is pretty cool. But otherwise, I went for Almighty Ordnance, which is going to fire missile barrage at that area and blow stuff up. And if you use it correctly, you can use it pretty much towards the end of your Sentinel duration. You can kind of, do a counter in your head and see how long the duration is. It lasts for 24 seconds. But what this does is if you kill somebody with this barrage, it's going to reset your Sentinel. And obviously having uptime on your Sentinel is really good because you're pairing that with the talent that gives you extra gun damage when your Sentinel's up. So overall, that ends up being very strong. This right here, I don't think is going to be very good. It's going to basically just, after you kill an enemy, your next 5 shots have a chance to fire an additional projectile. Personally, I don't think that that's going to end up being all that strong, because pretty much it's just 5 shots. It's not going to last that long, and 5 shots, it's not going to end up being all that much extra damage unless you're using like a bolt action sniper or something. But yeah, really not worth using unless you're using a gun that does not shoot that many bullets. In terms of the rest of the stuff, Sentinel emits a static field that sends a shock beam, draining the shield and replenishing yours. You can easily use this early on for more survivability. And then, adding the rocket pod that just makes your Sentinel do more damage. But personally, I like this because it's just going to let me basically get my Sentinel back immediately. So now we're going to revisit this tree. We can go back to the blue tree later because I think we're going to end up having a little bit of additional points. But immediately, you want to go into this, which every time you kill an enemy, you and your Digiclone are going to increase your gun damage by pretty much 20% and also get decent health regen. And that's also going to be further compounded by the fact that you went into Death Follows Close. So now what you want to do is you want to get down here to unlock additional movement speed whenever you have more action skills up. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to increase your magazine size. This is pretty much just free extra damage because you're going to have larger mag. And then you're also going to want to put a couple more points down here. So there's a couple things you can do. Personally, I don't think that giving your clone the ability to throw a nade mod is all that strong. So I kind of skipped this one. And then the first shot fired from your gun to fire a nade, it's okay. But if you were to max this out, it's only going to have a 20% chance to do it. So 1 out of every 5 times when you first reload and then you shoot your gun, it's just going to shoot a nade. Not that good, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. This is okay. Whenever you swap places with your clone, your shield immediately begins recharging. For me, this isn't helpful because I'm using a shield that has no capacity, and I'll get more into that later. But while leveling, this is going to be pretty good for you because you can pretty much just pop your clone, and then you can swap with it whenever you want to take advantage of this, and that can end up being really strong. But currently, we don't really have anywhere to go. So if you're leveling, you can put your point in this. For me, I don't need this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my action skill duration by, this is going to be by 6% currently, which is just going to increase the duration of my clone and my Sentinel, which means that I get more damage, or pretty much more effectiveness from this talent here, which is just more damage, of course. So now we're going to go into Supersonic Man. This makes it to where leveling is just faster overall because we're running super fast, but also we want to have more movement speed to take further advantage of violent momentum, which is going to make us do more damage the faster that we're moving. And this just increases our movement speed every time that we have an action skill up. So while Sentinel is up and while Clone is up, we're gaining 40% movement speed. So yeah, very strong. Another thing that you can spec into in this tree, which is pretty good for leveling especially, and even in endgame, whenever you press Q or whatever your skill ability is during Fight for Your Life, if your Digiclone is active, it's going to destroy the clone and immediately give you second wind, and it's also going to give you full health. So this is really good if you're, you know, having problems, you're dying frequently. You can just, if your clone is up and you die, you just blow up your clone pretty much, and then boom, you get this. Quickly, I should talk about what augments you want to put on your clone. If I'm being honest, all of these are pretty lackluster. I just went for, whenever I swap places, it does a Cryo Nova with my clone, because you get this early on and it just does a little bit of extra damage. The only other thing here is this is pretty good while leveling. Whenever your clone takes damage, your shield is restored by a portion. This is good. The problem being, I'm using a shield that has no capacity, but if you're leveling or you're just not using that shield, this is very strong. This one I'm not a fan of because it pretty much just blows up your clone, and then it doesn't really do that much damage. It only is up to 20,000 damage, which is literally how much damage I do per shot. So I would not recommend using Doppelganger. Another thing you can do is enemies are more likely to target your clone for a few seconds after it's summoned, which is pretty nice because, or after you swap it. So what you could do is you could summon it, wait 4 seconds, and then swap, and then the enemies are all going to focus your clone. Obviously, though, you put your clone at risk by doing that, and then it's possible that your clone just gets murdered. And then if that happens, you're going to be doing less damage because you're not going to have synchronicity up. Synchronicity, however you say it. And you're not going to have supersonic man up, but it's okay. And then this is also okay if Zane takes health damage while the clone is active. A portion of the damage is shared to the clone instead. But again, this is going to make your clone kind of get murdered, so I kind of stay away from it. It's really up to you what you want to use here. I think all of these are pretty lackluster, so use whatever you want to go for. I'm just going to go for Borrowed Time, Boom. Then I'm going to unlock Boom Enhance, which is going to make my clone basically just do a shitload of damage, and it's going to consume my nades. But as Zane, you're not even using nades because you're using both of your skills, which are going to take the place of your grenade. So this is just going to make your clone do extra damage, which is nice. The clone doesn't do that much damage as is, but hey, it's helpful, is what it is. And then I'm going to put 1 point into Borrowed Time because I want to get down to double barrel. So we're going to go boom, 1 point into Borrowed Time, and then we're going to, I think I'm going to unlock Old You here. And I'm kind of at a problem because I need 2 more points in this tree to unlock this, so I don't really know what to do here. It's kind of up to you. I'm probably just going to go for whenever I shoot an enemy, it has a chance to just throw the grenade. And then the first, time I shoot, I have a chance to throw a grenade. There's kind of get lost, and there's not really anything good to put there. You could stack this. I do extra shock damage, but I'm not using a shotgun. The reason that you want double barrel is your clone is going to get a copy of your gun, making your clone do significantly more damage. And then also, whenever you swap places with your clone, you're going to get extra damage. So you're pretty much just going to spawn your clone, swap places with them immediately, and then gain the effectiveness of that damage. Right now, I have 1 extra skill point. I'm just going to put it into Good Misfortune, which is going to increase the duration of my skills, which is pretty nice. Now, I want to mention an alternative version of this build that you can do. And like I said, there's a lot of room for kind of mix and matching with this. What you can easily do is, as you saw, I put kind of a few points into just random stuff here because I felt like I got stuck. What you can easily do is, instead of going for Boom Enhance and Double Barrel, you can pretty much just not use the clone at all and just stack into this tree by going into Synchronicity or whatever the fuck. Go into this for movement speed, and then be done with this tree, and then put those extra points into this tree and try to unlock Confident Competence. Once you have this unlocked, pretty much you just use the barrier instead of the clone. The barrier is going to give you 25% extra damage and 20% damage with this, which is going to end up being 45% extra damage, versus right here you gaining Boom Enhance and Double Barrel. Personally, I don't really like using the barrier. It can be strong as you're getting a lot of decent damage, and you can also get movement speed by using Charged Relay, or you can even use this for more health regen and reload speed. And then further on, if you wanted to, you could spec more into this and gain additional gun damage by using Retaliation, but then that would mean that you'd probably have to not spec into Supersonic Man and not spec into probably a point here, and maybe miss out on a little bit of fire rate there. I have not determined what is the perfect setup because all of them are so similar that it's difficult to tell. Honestly, the clone and the duration of this are pretty much the same, and the cooldown is pretty much the same. The barrier is cool because it's actually going to shield you, and you can end up giving it a shield that is the same as your shield, and that ends up making it pretty strong. What I were to spec into, if I were to do that, I would just spec into action skill cooldown rate, because then it just makes us get our skill cooldowns back faster, which is really good. And then I'd spec into whenever I score a crit, it has a chance to freeze the enemy. So then, because you do more damage against frozen enemies and it's just easier to kill them, boom. And then I would just spec into confident and competent, which is just pretty much free damage and additional accuracy, excuse me. You could also go for other stuff that gives you shield capacity, shield regenerate. All this stuff is pretty much survivability. The reason that I don't go for this, if I were to use that build setup, is that for me personally, I'm using a shield with 0 capacity, which I can get into in a second. So that is 2 versions of the build. The barrier version is very strong and potentially even stronger than this. It just depends on what you want to do. Both of them are good for survivability. Both of them are good for damage, because a clone is going to do damage and it is going to help you. But also with the barrier, you get extra movement speed, you get extra reload speed, you get action skill cooldown rate, you get the damage amp, you get the gun damage, and then if you were to reallocate some points, you could also get retaliation. So there's a lot of things that you can do there. Again, it's kind of up to personal preferences. The difference is not that substantial, and it just depends on what you want to do. So yeah, getting into why I'm using a 0 capacity shield and what relics and stuff I found are pretty good. This is only relevant if you are kind of at max level. While you're leveling a good class mod, I guess I can just talk about this. I don't know if you can get, while leveling, a class mod that's going to have the text that your weapon damage and movement speed is increased the lower your shield is. This is good because obviously you want additional movement speed, because it's going to help you with the one talent that you have where you get more damage when your movement speed is lower. But also it's just going to make you run faster. But it has the ability, whenever you activate an action skill, it's going to break your shield. So if you're looking for more survivability and this is causing problems, I wouldn't go for this. My class mod is pretty good because it's giving me 2 points into Supersonic Man, making me faster when I have my skills up. And it's also giving me points into this thing, which increases my damage when I have more movement speed, which is probably one of the best things to get it into, since I'm stacking so much movement speed that I'm literally just flying across the map. So this is really good. I'd probably want to have like reload speed or rate of fire or something on the bottom there. In terms of other stuff that you would want on Zane for your specking points or whatever, anything is good, really. I mean, if you were to get points into this, that would be pretty strong because you have your action skills up a lot of the time, or increasing your mag size is pretty good, increasing your gun damage on a kill skill is really good, increasing your rate of fire on a kill skill is really good, reload speed. A lot of that stuff is really strong. I'm happy with the class mod that I have, especially because I'm using Rough Rider, which pairs very well with it. So Rough Rider has a 0 capacity shield, meaning that I always have the max weapon damage and max movement speed that I can be gaining from this class mod. So I'm running very fast, getting a lot of damage, and it doesn't matter to me that when I use an active action skill, it breaks my shield, because Rough Rider has 0 capacity, and this also reduces incoming damage, and it's going to give me additional max health, which is pretty decent for survivability as it is. So Rough Rider pairs fantastically with this. In terms of a relic, currently I'm using a cryo damage relic because I'm using cryo weapons. That's simply just because those are the weapons that I have. But this is particularly good if you were to go into barrier spec and spec into whenever you score a crit on an enemy, there's a chance they'll be slowed until they end up being frozen. So if you were to use a relic where you do extra damage against frozen enemies, that's 35% damage that you're getting a decent chunk of the time, because you're freezing enemies anyways, because there isn't much else to spec into in that tree. In terms of other relics that are good, anything that gives you movement speed is okay, and pretty much just look for anything else that gives you damage. In terms of weapons, I haven't done a ton of testing on Zane. Pretty much any gun that is good is going to be good on Zane. There isn't any particular thing that works well with Zane versus something else. The only thing would be just the gun being cryo, to more take advantage of, whenever you score a crit, it just freezes them, because then they just get frozen faster, and then you could take more advantage of a relic. Beyond that, the only thing that would matter is using something that lets you strafe faster, to take further advantage of the fact that you'd be moving faster, gaining more damage from violent momentum. A great thing for that is an SMG. I'm using Knight's Disciplined Hawken. Haven't tried a ton of SMGs so far. This seems to be pretty strong, But again, there could be a bunch of different guns that I could be using for this that would be very strong. So leave your recommendations in the comments. But if you're just leveling, I'd recommend just getting like an SMG, an AR, or a shotgun, maybe anything that takes good advantage of having a really good fire rate and good reload speed. And then kind of just try to run around fast, you know, zoom, 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 and strafe and gain extra damage from that. I've been trying Lucian's Call too. It's pretty strong. Nighthawken is good. Lyuda is just good in general. And then I have this, which is an anointed thing that after I swap places with my clone, the weapon damage is increased. Honestly, I don't even notice the additional weapon damage from this. Maybe it literally only lasts for like a second or something, so I don't even know if it's worth trying to find a gun that is anointed like this. If you have any anointed gun recommendations or just any recommendations for Zane, please leave them in the comments. If you're looking for a good grenade, I've heard that the Merv bomb or whatever it's called is really good, but porcelain pipe bomb is broken, so if you're trying to, you know, kill bosses with this build, this is going to help you out a ton. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the build. In terms of what you want to do with your, you know, tokens, for Zane, I don't really think it matters personally. I would just go into the Enforcer tree first just for free damage. Hollow Point is bugged at the moment though, and it does kill you if you crit an enemy and then you kill them, so I would pay attention to that. Otherwise, it's good to, you know, when your reduce the skill cooldown when you're at full shields if you're not using a Rough Rider. Otherwise, use whatever you want, man. It really doesn't matter. You're going to end up unlocking all of these anyway. So yeah, hopefully this did help. If it did, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos similar to this one. Follow me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Nick2. Follow me on Twitter at Nick2YT. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.